Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and we're back for another edition of our series, Alabama football's best 15 games of the 21st century. We're counting down from 15 to 1. We've done 4 of these already. It's been a lot of fun. We've done LSU 2014, Florida 2020, Texas A&M 2013, Notre Dame 2012 last time. Go back and listen to those episodes. You're going to love it if you're an Alabama fan. And today, it's number 11. And our pick for the 11th best Alabama game from the 21st century is Alabama-Auburn 2014, the 2014 Iron Bowl, a shootout in Bryant-Denny Stadium under the lights. And helping me to do this today is our friend and our colleague, Michael Casagrande. Michael, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be back. It's great to be back on the podcast. I know the listeners have missed me. So your great reward for this post-Memorial Day week is a look at my face.
We've always called you a breath of fresh air around here,
Oh,
Michael.
everywhere I go.
Yeah, and you're actually down at SEC spring meetings down in Destin, so nobody envies you right now. But everybody can read your coverage there, and they should. You know, as always, Michael, with this series, we're going to run through some categories about what we remember, what we loved about the games, the best plays, the best players, the best moments, and more. But we're going to start with what we call the opening drive here. We're going to contextualize the game, what was happening at that point in the season, state of the program, touch on a few key storylines heading into it. We like to set the table here. This was November 29th, 2014. It was the final game of the 2014 season, and we've already talked about a game from this season, the LSU overtime thriller I mentioned earlier. So, Michael, as somebody who covered this team and covered this game at this time, when I bring up Alabama's 2014 season, what is the first thing that springs to mind for you?
For that season?
Yeah.
I mean, Blake Sims and Amari Cooper, I feel like that was like the especially in that game, was the matchup, the connection, the deep ball. Blake Sims would chuck it as high as he could, and Amari Cooper would run underneath it. I think that was, it was the first season of the playoff. Alabama losing to Ole Miss, then coming back, having a great season after that, where they couldn't afford to lose anything, backs against the wall. It's an entertaining team. Lane Kiffin as offensive coordinator. You know, there were definitely storylines to go with that season that made it interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to get to a couple that you just mentioned. I mean, Alabama had a lot of momentum going into this game. They stormed out of the gate this season. They won their first 4 games. And Blake Sims, like you said, had been named the starter after a battle with transfer Jake Coker during the offseason. But then they're upset on the road in Oxford. Like you said, they lose to Hugh Freeze, Bo Wallace, and Ole Miss 23-17. And things start to look a little bleak, certainly from the perspective of Alabama fans who are hoping to compete for a national championship, a shot at that first college football playoff in the 4-game format. And they barely eke one out in rainy conditions at Arkansas, one of the all-time ugly games during the Saban era. And then they bounce back with a 59-0 win against Texas A&M. They go on a 6-game winning streak before the Iron Bowl. And as we said, Blake Sims is the starting quarterback. Amari Cooper is an absolute superstar this season. And you said his name. It's Lane Kiffin's first year as the offensive coordinator. Michael, I got to ask you, I mean, you reported on this at the time. What do you remember about the Kiffin hire? Like, when did that start sort of like percolating? And what was the response when you heard that Nick Saban had actually hired Lane Kiffin that January?
Well, it began with them bringing in Lane Kiffin as a consultant to help with the offense. With Doug Nussmeier was still the offensive coordinator, and it was a slow march towards the inevitable. At a certain point, where it was like they're actually going to hire this guy, because Kiffin had just been fired the previous season in midseason at USC. Went from being, the belle of the ball, had his dream job, was on his big rise up, and got fired in the tarmac in wherever he was, Arizona. So it was, he was looking for a job, and you just kept thinking, like, there's no way. Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin are just oil and vinegar. They couldn't be any more different. How could this ever be a thing? How could they ever work together? But it happened. It happened. I guess there were steps to it that made it less shocking when it happened officially. But you're just like, I'll believe it when I see it. And it lasted for 3 seasons. Like, you could have never told me at that point. And still to this day, it's like they worked together for 3 seasons. I'd love to have the behind the scenes book on how all of this things have come out since that point of some of the shenanigans behind the scenes. But I just the two most opposite people working together and having success.
Yes, Kiffin has spoken a little more freely in the past few years when he wasn't really able to speak at all, which he's talked about since he left Alabama and working for Nick Saban. And it was obviously a sea change for Alabama and for Saban specifically when you had this traditional run first balanced attack, and he's now up against these spread offenses, these no huddle
Hmm.
offenses. They're giving him trouble as a defensive specialist, and he seems to understand. And there's that famous quote, right, that people often cite: "Is this what we want college football to be?" And Saban takes the steps by hiring a guy, an offensive genius like Lane Kiffin, to sort of transition him into that era to where they can outscore opponents instead of stop them. So another storyline heading into this game, and really the primary one, Michael, I think, is Alabama. They want to avenge the kick six, right? It's the first Iron
Right.
Bowl since the kick six. Auburn cost Alabama a shot at a third straight national championship with one of the biggest plays in college football history. Alabama fans need closure, okay? And they have an explosive offense, but so does Auburn. I mean, Nick
Right.
Marshall is back. Cameron Artis-Payne is at running back. They've got wide receivers like Sammy Coates and Duke Williams and Quan Bray. I mean, they're loaded. Gus Malzahn has Auburn competitive at this point, and he's clearly a guy who gave Nick Saban more trouble than just about any coach in the country, other than maybe Hugh Freeze at this point. Uh, as Saban often struggled against these Auburn teams and Auburn teams that were ranked during his period at Alabama, and
Right.
Auburn's ranked 15th in this game. They're 8-4. They're 4-4 in the SEC, so they can play a little bit of spoiler to Alabama here. They've got their eyes on the SEC appearing in the inaugural college football playoff. Michael, what was the vibe heading into this game? What do you remember about it? Were people expecting Alabama just to like blow them out, avenge the kick six on their way to an SEC championship and possible national championship? Or was there a little more tension and a little more worry than people might remember?
I'm trying to think back. I think there was a combination of factors. I think that there was that Nick Saban doesn't lose twice in a row to the same team, same coach. But there was also this guy gives him trouble, and they already lost to another guy who gives him trouble. Hugh Freeze and Malzahn were the some of the big names of the hurry up no huddle offense that clearly gave them trouble. And Kirby Smart was still trying to him and Saban were still trying to adjust the defense. I mean, they were adjusting the offense, but adjusting defenses to be able to combat this kind of style. But Nick Marshall, his run pass option, his ability to run and throw the ball deep, clearly was an issue in 2013 and was an issue again that night and was known to be, there was a little bit of there was definitely that revenge factor, I think, but there was definitely a little bit of like, uh, you know, they might do this again to us because they definitely have the ability in the defense that sometimes struggled personnel wise to play fast and to not to deal without huddling. Um, so I remember it was going to be a very interesting game, and it turned out to be correct.
It was amazing. And I wonder what you think about this sort of like fan attitude towards the Iron Bowl, because a lot of Alabama fans would tell you that they don't care about the Iron Bowl. Their eyes are again on the bigger prize. They care about national championships, whereas Auburn only cares about beating Alabama. That's what their entire season is built around. And they see Auburn as this obstacle on their way to sort of like another rung in the ladder as they're climbing to the top. Do you think there's any truth to that, or do you think that Alabama, like, do you think Auburn was on the level with Alabama at this point during this era? I mean, they're only a few years away from winning a national championship and competing for another one the previous season. So, what was your take, sort of like, on the rivalry at this
Yeah,
point?
no, I think it was much uh, compared to where it is right now with 5 straight Alabama wins, where Auburn had beat them in 2010, won the national championship. 2011 game was not competitive. 12 clearly not competitive, but then 13 obviously cranked cranked the volume way up. Um, Most iconic moments in college football history. You're going to want to avenge that. I don't think anybody was. Um, I don't think the phrase "the Iron Bowl doesn't matter" was not a thing in that season. Clearly, already having that one loss, they couldn't afford to lose to Auburn and have any of their postseason goals come true. So that was a big moment. It was one of the most anticipated Iron Bowls. I feel like probably that I've covered at Bryant Denny was probably that one.
And the place was rocking too. And we're going to get into that in a second. But the game starts, Michael. Adam Griffith sends the opening kickoff out of bounds, but Auburn fumbles it back to Alabama on the first play from scrimmage. 5 plays later, TJ Yeldon scores a touchdown. Alabama goes up 7-0. Starts out well enough. Auburn answers with a field goal. And then Blake Sims finds Amari Cooper for a touchdown. They're up 14-3 early. Then Auburn really answers. They get some stops. Sims throws a couple of interceptions in the first half. Auburn capitalizes. They go up 23-21 at the half. Alabama gets the ball to open the second half, and then Blake Sims throws his 3rd interception of the game. Auburn goes up by 12. It starts looking pretty bleak for Alabama. But, Michael, watching the Saban era, you can never really count out Saban's Alabama teams during this era. There were only maybe a couple of losses that you could call convincing those years. When it comes to watching games like sports, are you a fatalist as a spectator and as a reporter? Like, do you jump to conclusions, or did covering Saban's teams maybe alter that perspective at all, including this game when Alabama had to sort of stay resilient and forge a comeback?
Yeah, I think I probably in the press box was thinking that they were in some deep trouble when they fell behind like that in the second half. There was time was running out. They it was a team that gave them trouble. Everything that we had talked about, all the worries about how they handled this offense, it was coming true. And then you're turning the ball over on top of that. There are always those telltale signs of an upset or a loss in that time for the Saban era, and all those kind of things were happening. All the lights were blinking. So yeah, I thought they were probably in deep trouble, and I thought that might have been how that game was going to go when I think it was a 12-point game in the second half. I wasn't sure that they were going to have the offensive firepower or to be able to avoid the turnovers enough and make the stops on defense to make up 12 points.
Yeah, and I've always compared Alabama, especially Saban's teams, to like Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies, where it's just like they're not gonna be dead until you're sure that they are dead, and they're probably still not even at that point. And this was one of those games, and even when they lose, that happens. But I think that this is simultaneously Blake Sims' worst game as Alabama's quarterback, but also the best game that he played in the position. Like, weirdly enough, it's kind of a balanced experience. And, he throws 3 picks, but Saban and Kiffin stick with him, and he leads this comeback really by giving the ball to the best player, Amari Cooper. We get this 39-yard shot in the third quarter for a touchdown. Auburn answers with a field goal, and then we get what I think is probably the play of the game, Sims finding Cooper for the 75-yard bomb. He makes a catch, shakes off a defensive back for another touchdown. Alabama finally retakes the lead, and they don't look back at that point. Michael, I've said Amari Cooper's name a few times here, and Kiffin was always so great at putting the ball in the hands of his best playmakers, and that was unquestionably Cooper in 2014. They built the entire offense around him. He was a Heisman finalist, someone who just seemed to show up every game, smooth route runner, really fast, sneaky strong. How special was Amari Cooper this season?
He was, I mean, among the best receivers I've covered. I mean, Devontae Smith won the Heisman. I was in New York for Amari Cooper when he was either runner-up or third in that Heisman voting. I mean, at a time where receivers weren't winning many Heisman's. So he was, especially as a freshman. I mean, he had a great freshman year in 2012, national championship, had a bit of a down year 2013 relatively, and then was the best receiver in the country that year by far. Paired perfectly with Blake Sims, who had a cannon, throw it high. Amari would run underneath it. But in that game, I specifically remember, and I know I'm trying to remember what the name of that Auburn defensive coordinator who was fired the next day or the day after. I don't know if it was Borges, but they were not pressing him at the line of scrimmage. They were allowing Amari Cooper to have a free release off the line on those big plays in the second half, those big bombs. No one touched him. And if you didn't put a hand on Amari Cooper and you allowed him to get up to speed, you were cooked. And it was like I remember sitting in the press box. We had a better seat than we had now, sitting at the 50-yard line, and we were able to see him release off the. I can picture it right now in my eyes. Him releasing off the line of scrimmage untouched, and it was like, what? I'm sure Lane Kiffin had his hands up, wearing, holding his Waffle House menu card. He sees them not touching him, and like, that's going to be a touchdown, and it was. And they fired him the next day. Just insane strategy for covering Amari Cooper to roll out the red carpet and say, "Well, go ahead, get downfield on us."
Yeah, it was embarrassing. I mean, it was just an amazing game for him. I think that was Ellis Johnson. I just looked up, who
Okay,
was the defensive
sorry,
coordinator at
Uncle.
that point. Yeah, where they all run together, Michael. So Alabama dominates the fourth quarter. Just going through the rest of this, they outscore Auburn 21-8 in the fourth. Sims runs for a touchdown. He finds DeAndrew White for one. Freshman Derrick Henry gets a 25-yard dagger touchdown. They go up by 19 points before Auburn scores another one in garbage time, but Alabama wins 55-44 in an absolute classic shootout. It got out of hand in the fourth quarter, but it was much closer than
Oh
that.
yeah,
It was tense in the building. Michael, one thing I
yeah.
remember is the atmosphere in this one. It was
Hmm.
a night game, as I mentioned. It was super loud, and I remember in particular the Dixieland Delight being particularly loud in this game. Michael, you were
I
always
think,
great. You've always been great about recording that moment in the game, like really
yeah.
showing fans inside of what Bryant-Denny Stadium looks like in big games like this. Well, I just want to know, what do you think of the Dixieland Delight tradition in Bryant-Denny Stadium?
I mean, that was the one that got it banned. That was the night that it got it banned for several years.
Why, Michael?
They did not greet Auburn with the kind of charm and character that I'm sure that the athletic director and administration would have liked. I think that was the yeah. I mean, I still remember seeing videos of that echoing throughout the stadium. But it was a night game. It was. I'm trying to remember specifically. It was a night game on ESPN, a very rare an ESPN Iron Bowl. I think there was something to do with a trade when with CBS for different rights for night games, for having another LSU game at night. So they swapped over, and ESPN got a night game. So a rare night Iron Bowl. I don't know. That might have been the only one I've covered since I've been covering this team for
Would
15.
that have been Nestler and Blackledge calling the game in Tuscaloosa? I haven't. I forgot to look back and see who was calling it, but
Most likely, whoever,
yeah,
whoever their A team was, yeah.
yeah.
So it was to have that game at night, given the circumstances, having all day to get ready for it. It was a coliseum like atmosphere where I'm sure Auburn did not feel very welcomed in Tuscaloosa that night.
Well, back to the Dixieland Delight thing
Oh yeah,
again.
yeah.
That tradition. What do you think of that? Having covered Alabama for as long as you've had, you have, do you think that that's something that like really adds on to the game experience? Like it's obviously changed throughout the years with them piping in noise, and they took it
Hmm.
away. Like you said, they banned it for a couple of years. What do you think of Dixieland Delight?
I mean, it's. I'm not necessarily a big country music guy. I'm not a big, me personally, it's not about me, but I think it's what adds the spice to what college football is. It's college football. To have something that's anticipated, the crowd looks forward to it. To have the entire crowd singing a song, um, and adding on however many lyrics they choose to add on. That's what makes college football college football. So um, I hope they don't ban it again. Just for the flavor of it. It brings people together. I mean, people stay at the stadium for games that are out of hand just for that moment. The night with the LED lights flashing, it's fun. So people are having fun. I'm not going to be the one to step on it. I know there are concerns about families and hearing four-letter words. Um,
Yeah, we're not going to concern ourselves
I'm
with
sorry.
that. Yeah, yeah, no worries. But I think it's great. I used to kind of hate on it a little bit when it was early in the practice of it. It was new, and it was kind of like like with new traditions, like you never really want to welcome those, and like there were like smaller sections of the stadium who were more into it than the rest. But it's really grown into something that, like you said, the entire fan base really looks forward to, and it's just like this moment of like intensity and unity and positivity. And it's really something to behold with seeing like 100,000 people sing that all at once. I remember at the Rose Bowl out in Pasadena that when they played Dixieland Delight, Alabama had all the momentum in that game at that point. In the fourth quarter, it looked like Alabama was going to win the game against Michigan, and they obviously didn't. But I remember that being a pretty like special version of that. So if you can, it should be, I think, on your college football bucket list, right? Like so many traditions and so many stadiums. Just going to Bryant Denny for an Iron Bowl would be enough. But if you're in the building for a close game and they start singing that song, it's pretty special. So something to look forward to and something that everybody should do. Okay, Michael,
And
go ahead.
I just want to add one plug if anyone wants to go back and read my story from
Yeah.
2024. Yeah, 2023. I was able to catch up with the songwriter of Dixieland Delight, who happened to be going to his very first Alabama football game, and I was able to stand with him. We have video of him listening to the crowd sing his song back to him. Not it wasn't the band Alabama sang it, but it was a songwriter who wrote it. And the songwriter, who's not super famous, nobody recognized him. No one would have known who he was in that moment. But it was a fun story to write. Just very fortunate to catch up with him.
Yeah, oh gosh, I can't believe I didn't mention that, Michael. That was an awesome story and just an awesome visual of, like you said, nobody would know the guy, seeing him on the street or in a stadium, and he blended in. But for him to like see 100,000 plus people just shouting that song all in unison, really cool. And yeah, people should go back and read that story. Google it. Find it on AL.com.
Yep.
All right, next category here, Michael. Let's name the MVP of this game. Who won this game? It's usually a player, but it can be a coach, it can be a broadcaster, somebody who may have gone viral, or just somebody we really remember from the game this many years later. Michael, who is the 2014 Iron Bowl MVP in your eyes?
I mean, it's just too obvious to say. Maybe we could just do the fired Auburn defensive coordinator. He was the MVP for deciding not to guard Amari Cooper properly. Maybe he was the key to that game, because if you jam him at the line, maybe he's not getting free. Because I mean, Amari Cooper would be the easy pick for that. But maybe the Auburn defensive staff for um, for doing such a bad job.
Yeah, I think you're right. And on that note, you're right. Like the obvious pick is Amari Cooper, and like I said, you could even throw in Blake Sims, despite the
Yeah,
3 interceptions, just in terms of leading the comeback. I've got Lane Kiffin for this. I think it was indicative of his patience, and maybe he just didn't trust anybody else on the in the quarterback room or on the roster, but he trusted Blake Sims. He kept drawing up plays that Auburn, like you said, couldn't handle. He got the ball in the hands of guys like Cooper and late Derrick Henry to close it out. He knew how to give Alabama a shot at getting back into it, and he knew how to put it away. Alabama put up 539 yards of offense, which is just insane. And I said it was a shootout, too. I'm not picking anybody on the defensive side of the ball, because Alabama ends up giving up 630 total
yeah.
yards in this game, which is
I mean, Sammy
uncharacteristic.
Coates.
Yeah.
Sammy Coates had a
Burnt
big night.
200 plus yards for Sammy Coates. Just a monster game for him. Amari Cooper finishes with 224 yards, 13 catches, 3 touchdowns. I mean, Heisman-like numbers. There's a reason he was a finalist,
Yeah.
So,
That was a big night for his candidacy, probably.
yeah, TJ Yeldon, too. Big game for him. 19
Yeah.
carries, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Blake Sims finishes 20 of 27, 312 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Nick Marshall, I mean, a guy who's converted from defensive back to being a quarterback, 27 of 43 for 456 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So just a monster game. He was a thorn in the side of Nick Saban and Alabama.
I'm sure there were some third and Kirby's in that game. I have no doubt.
Yeah, and this is like almost the end of Kirby's tenure as the defensive coordinator. Just one more season, I believe, as the DC, and they would win the national championship. But okay, we're gonna talk takeaways here, Michael. I mean, last category. What were the consequences of this game? Like, does this game look any different with the benefit of history? Is this an Iron Bowl that you remember fondly, or for any other reason? I mean, are there better Iron Bowls? Are there worse Iron Bowls? Like, what is the main takeaway you have from this one?
I mean, there were definitely more exciting Iron Bowls. I mean, I think the final score maybe makes it. If you look back on it, and you just see that, you see 55-44. I mean, it was a hell of a game. I mean, where both teams took big leads, big swings and momentum. But it's a tough. I mean, in my 15 years or 16 years covering Iron Bowls, it's tough to. There were some all-time classics. It's tough to put it at the very top, or near that. But it was a game that was crucial for Alabama to get into and they may have already been into the SEC championship, but to win that and get the first number one seed in that 14 playoff, um, you know, some bit of history in that, to get in there. Ultimately, a disappointing end of that season, getting beat by Ohio State in that Sugar Bowl, the fourth seed, who went on to win the national championship. Um, so I feel like anything in that season, there's always going to be a little bit of tinge of like what could have been, because they didn't fulfill the ultimate goal. But in that moment, in that night, it was a wild ride. It was fun, exciting. Um, I don't think it should take away too much from that game, but there's always be a little bit in the back of your mind was like, yeah, but they didn't win a national championship.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, Alabama, again, a lot of momentum. They won a lot of games to finish the season, including the SEC championship, where they just dominated Missouri. I think it was like
Hmm.
42-13, just complete obliteration on their way to being the first number one seed in the first college football playoff. And, I was in New Orleans for that game too, on the sideline covering it. And Alabama looked good. I mean, that game's obviously not going to make this list of 15 best games in the eyes of Alabama fans, but it looked good early. They go up, like 21 or 20-7 in the first quarter. It looks like Alabama's going to blow them out. And then
Yeah,
just bad things happen, whether they just let their foot off the gas or whether Ohio State just stepped up with guys like Ezekiel Elliott. You had the starter in his second game, I think, as a starter, in Cardell Jones.
yeah,
Not a lot of film on him, but he comes
no,
in and just kind of dominates Alabama. I mean, that was a tough one.
yeah, yeah. Didn't go to college to play school. Cardell Jones. He was the start of the season as the third string quarterback. Yeah, I think there was some overlooking. I think people overlooked that offense and seeing a guy who was third string, but clearly the best probably 2 game run for a playoff contender, coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, and they go on to
Uh,
just dominate Oregon, right? And
right.
that's probably when Alabama wanted a shot at Jimbo Fisher and Jameis Winston, who went back to
Oh
the
yeah.
college football playoff and just got torn up by
Right.
Oregon in the semifinals. So you're right, disappointing end to the season, but I think what you said earlier, that this Alabama team was really entertaining. Like, this is one
Hmm.
of the seasons that I really remember. I've gone on and on this podcast in various forums about how I think Blake Sims is an underrated character. I think in the history of Alabama football, I was saddened that he only got one season as the starting quarterback. But I just think that he was electrifying to watch. He was so different that people
Hmm.
didn't know what to expect with him, and he comes in and sets passing records, and is just a guy that you could really rely on. He was a winner, very competitive, just a likable figure
Yeah.
in the history of it. But I think some of that has to do with Lane Kiffin coming in, and the fact
Oh
that
yeah.
that was his first season, and Derrick Henry's a freshman, and so the future is still bright for Alabama at this point too, Michael.
Yeah, no, and I always say TJ Yeldon's one of the most underappreciated running backs in that era. He kind of gets lost in the Ingrams and the Richardsons and the Henry. Uh, he had a few fumbles that drove people crazy, but he was also, I think, one of the top running backs on that 2012 national championship team. The next 2 seasons weren't championship seasons, and there's always going to be a little bit of um, question about that. But I think he was, as a running back, as a player, I think he was far underappreciated by the fan base.
Yeah, poor Alabama fans. This was amidst a 2-season national championship drought, and so
Right.
just a long couple of seasons for Alabama fans, to say the least. And TJ Yeldon just happened to be the starter. But when he signed with Alabama in his freshman year, people loved that guy, and they loved him for his career too. He was an effective running back, and he was a guy that people really enjoyed watching. So good to shout him out, because, like you said, he gets lost in the long list of amazing Alabama running backs. All right. Well, I think that does it. Michael, that's number 11 on the list of Alabama's 15 best games of the 21st century. As always, do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments. Give us some feedback. You can find Beat Everyone on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And Michael Casagrande, you can read his work on AL.com. Michael, it's good to have you back, man. Thank you for doing this.
It's always great to be here. I'm happy to talk about any of these next 10 games. I'm Any of those that I was around for, I'm happy to talk about it.
Awesome. We'll bring you back for sure for that and more. Okay. Well, Beat Everyone is always produced by Matt Scalisi and John Hammondtree. Thanks to those guys. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Thank you. We're going to see you next time.